Today, we're diving into one of the biggest turning points in all of human history. But here's the thing. This story isn't about some powerful king or massive army. Nope. We're on the trail of something else. A single, invisible traveler. And its journey was absolutely devastating.
I mean, really think about that. What if the most lethal force in history was something you couldn't even see? Something so small it had the power to bring an entire continent to its knees. It's a wild thought, right?
Well, back in the 1300s, that's exactly what happened. This traveler was born. And its story, well, it starts out really quietly, almost silently, in the huge, sprawling landscapes of Central Asia. A place just teeming with life, with absolutely no idea of the threat that was brewing right there, in its midst.
All right, so let's get into it. The story of this invisible traveler doesn't kick off in Europe, where it caused all the chaos. Nah, its origins are much further east, on the vast steppes of Central Asia. This is its birthplace. So this traveler, it had this whole secret life, totally hidden from view. It was passed along this incredible invisible chain. See, it lived inside these tiny little fleas. And those fleas, they lived on rats. For literally centuries, it was just there, kind of waiting in the wings for its big chance to explore.
And here we have it. The traveler finally has a name. A scientific one, at least. Yersinia pestis. Yep, that's the bacterium we're talking about. A tiny organism that, up until this point in history, was a complete and utter mystery to humankind.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth does a microscopic creature travel thousands and thousands of miles? Well, it got clever. It became a stowaway, a silent passenger on the most high-tech travel network of the day, the merchant ship. Okay, so picture this. It all started with trade. Merchant ships are loading up with all this amazing stuff from Asia, silk, spices, you name it. But they're also taking on a secret cargo they know nothing about, rats. And on those rats, you guessed it, were the fleas carrying our invisible traveler. So when these ships finally dock in European ports, they weren't just dropping off fancy goods. They were unleashing an invader nobody could see. And here's the thing. When our traveler finally made landfall, it found a place that was completely, tragically unprepared. Europe in the 1300s? Well, it was the perfect set of conditions for an absolute perfect storm. See, Europe at this time was booming. Cities were growing like crazy. But with all that growth came some serious problems. We're talking crowded cities, really unclean streets, pretty much no sanitation to speak of, and people living practically on top of each other. For our traveler, this wasn't just a new continent. It was paradise, the perfect hunting ground. And just like that, one of the darkest chapters in all of human history began. The traveler had arrived, and it was about to make its presence known in a big, big way. I mean, can you even imagine the sheer terror? Suddenly, this strange new illness just appears. It starts with a high fever and then these awful, painful swellings, the infamous buboes. And the speed, it was shocking. The stories from that time are just chilling. You could be totally fine in the morning and gone by night. Honestly, the fear itself started to spread even faster than the disease.
Whole villages just emptied out. The bells from the churches tolled endlessly for the dead. I mean, that really says it all, doesn't it? That sound became the soundtrack to a world that was literally falling apart.
And the final cost? It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. It comes down to this one devastating fraction. One-third of Europe's entire population just gone, vanished, in only a few years. Think about that, 1 out of every 3 people you knew. The world was never, ever going to be the same. And, maybe the biggest tragedy of all was that they had absolutely no idea what they were up against. People were desperate. They blamed everything from the alignment of the stars to punishment from God. The real answer? That it was a bacterium carried by fleas on rats that was totally beyond them. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and couldn't even begin to imagine. But the story doesn't just end there, in all that darkness. It took a long time, but eventually, humanity started to fight back. And the very first step? It was to finally unmask this invisible enemy. And I mean a long time. We're talking over 500 years before science finally caught up. For centuries, the plague would come and go, but it always remained this terrifying, almost supernatural force.
It wasn't until 1894, that's right, 1894, that a scientist named Alexander Yersin finally got our traveler under a microscope and gave it its name. And that right there was the game changer. Once you can name something, once you can see it, you can start to fight it. Putting a name and a face to this invisible traveler was the turning point. The mystery was finally solved, and that's when it started to lose its power over us. That one discovery unlocked everything else. Once we understood it was fleas on rats, well, that led to huge improvements in public hygiene. Science started to replace superstition. And then, fast forward to the 20th century and boom, antibiotics. We finally had a real weapon to fight the bacterium head on. So, after all that, what's the legacy of this invisible traveler? What did its devastating journey actually teach us? Well, it's a pretty profound lesson for all of us. You know, the funny thing is, Yersinia pestis never actually went extinct. It's still out there, living in small corners of the world. But now, it's contained. It's not this world-ending terror anymore. It's a manageable disease. And it's a quiet reminder of just how powerful microscopic life can be.
When you boil it all down, what really defeated the Black Death wasn't some magic spell or a powerful army. It was knowledge. Simple as that. That slow, sometimes really difficult process of scientific discovery, that turned out to be our greatest shield. And that kind of leads us to one last thought, right? The story of this one bacterium is from the past, sure, but the lesson here is timeless. It really makes you stop and think, what invisible travelers are out there shaping our world today? They might not be biological. Maybe they're technological or ideological, just silently moving through our world, waiting for their moment to change everything.